I'm Sean Aylmer, and this is a Fear and Greed extended interview. All the other good bits we couldn't fit into the daily podcast. If you're looking for the daily episode of Fear and Greed, check the podcast playlist. Otherwise, enjoy the interview. Home delivery of food is booming, and it's largely due to two main factors: the rise of the gig economy and the COVID-19 lockdowns. There'd be very few people listening to me right now who haven't ordered food using one of the main delivery platforms. My guest today is Ed McManus, CEO of Deliveroo, one of the big players in this space. Ed, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Hi, Sean. Thank you.
Tell me the Deliveroo story.
Deliveroo's been going for about 8 years internationally. We're headquartered in London and in 12 countries across the world. And we've been going in Australia for about 5 years.
Okay. And so whereabouts do you operate within Australia, and what's the service that you're providing?
Yeah, so we operate in most of the main cities in our states and territories, larger cities as well as some of the smaller cities. Our headquarters is in Melbourne, where most of us are based, but we do have people across all of the cities, as I said. We work with about 14,000 restaurant partners and about 8,000 delivery riders. And the service is pretty simple. People download an app, the Deliveroo app, or go on our website. There they will see a range of food options available for pretty quick delivery, usually 20 to 30 minutes. They make their choice and order food from one of our restaurant partners. Our systems then allocate a rider. I say rider, Sean, it's about 50% motorcycles or scooters, about 50% cars. So it depends on where you live. It's really about speed of delivery. It's obviously in city centres. Scooters are quicker. In the suburbs, a car is usually the choice. And then the rider will pick up the food and deliver it to you at your home.
Okay. And so all the riders, the drivers, for want of a better term, are contractors?
That's right. So it's about 8,000. Typically, they will do deliveries for more than one player. So not just Deliveroo. So it's not an exclusive model. It's a gig economy model. So about 80 to 90% are students, often international students who are here contributing to our economy through education. And as you know, education is one of our biggest exports, and the type of visa allows an international student to work about 20 hours a week. So they'll do that to fund their way through third level education, I guess, of one form or another. Then another chunk of people will be, doing what might be described as a traditional form of employment, and then the gig economy. In this case, Deliveroo is what they do on top to, make some extra money or pay off a bill or whatever it is they want to do. And then some people will be contracting with Deliveroo, doing deliveries on top of caring responsibilities. So it's a mix, but the vast majority are doing other things in their lives and taking advantage of the flexibility offered by Deliveroo to fit deliveries in around those other things.
So there are a number of operators in the same space. What's the competitive advantage of Deliveroo?
Well, I would say all of us are trying to get that competitive advantage. We're very focused on food. Obviously, other companies are in different sectors as well. Sean, I've been in 4 industries. I think food delivery is my 4th. And, the competitive intensity in this is probably similar to the other 3. And, I guess we're really trying to focus on food, trying to focus on the consumer. It's very tempting to pay lots of attention to what your competitors in business are doing, but actually what I've learned over the years is you're much better to focus on consumer needs and think about where that might be traveling, and then try and eke out an advantage or something unique by doing that.
Okay. Domino's, they have their own workforce, but I do remember the CEO, Don May, saying the big thing about a pizza is getting it to someone's home quick so it's hot, because pizza tastes a hell of a lot better when it's hot. Because for me to buy food, I kind of want it quickly, and I do want it hot. How important is it?
Oh, it's probably the most important thing. He's right about pizza, but I don't think pizza is unique there. And Deliveroo delivers all sorts of pizzas from a range of small and large restaurant types. But ultimately, I think it's partly temperature. Most of the food we deliver is hot, so it needs to arrive hot. And so that means you've got, about 10 to 20 minutes to do it. But also, I think there's consumer behavior in terms of the way we think about food. I mean, often we become hungry and we want our food pretty quickly because you don't want to sit around being hungry. So that's something unique to food. But also, broadly, consumer expectations are changing. And so, what would have been considered fast delivery 10 years ago and what we consider fast delivery now are completely changed. And so, in many parts of our economy, fast means immediate. And so for us, as I said before, from the time you order on the app to when the knock happens on your door, that's 20 to 30 minutes. So it's pretty quick to meet the demand of consumers, but also, as you say, to just have the food arrive at the right temperature, in the right form, all those things.
So how big a year was 2020?
It was a huge year for the delivery sector. The sector had been growing pretty rapidly in Australia for several years. But of course, as you know, unfortunately, COVID meant in some states and different states for different periods, Victoria, unfortunately, for the longest period, restaurants had to close to dine in consumers. And that meant that delivery, as well as, pick up, takeaway, and drive through, depending on the sort of restaurant, was the only way that restaurant operators could continue to get revenue. So we became a very important source of revenue to many restaurant operators. And that meant, of course, that the market exploded, probably doubled in 2020 market size. And there's not really good data on this, but we think probably the market doubled. Obviously, Sean, that's good for delivery companies like us, but not so good at all for our restaurant partners. And ultimately, we are entirely dependent on restaurants for our business. While many people have said to me, over the last few months, so you kind of in one way, from a business perspective, sad that lockdown has ended. Well, no, absolutely not, because we need restaurants to be viable and doing well. It's just such an important part of our business, and it's such an important part of our economy and social fabric. And because I have 3 young children at home, I was definitely looking forward to lockdown ending in Victoria. But yeah, so look, in summary, Sean, good year for delivery, but we're very pleased that things are approaching, not quite back to normal, but approaching normality for our restaurants so that they can continue to do what they do.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement with that one. Ed, stay with me. We'll be back in a moment. My guest today is Ed McManus, CEO of Deliveroo. Now, Deliveroo recently released the HospoVitality Index report. Now, I just want to run through some of the main findings in that. So confidence in the restaurant sector has grown.
That's right. And I should say, look, as I walk around city centre of Melbourne, where, as I mentioned, we're based, unfortunately, I do see many restaurants, cafes, bars have closed. And, just looking through the window, they don't look like they're reopening anytime soon, which is really, really tragic for the owners, operators, and the staff who've lost their jobs. So really sad. So I guess, that's an important caveat to this. When we then did the report into the restaurants that have remained open, confidence has grown. It's gone from, net kind of -9 to net 42 positive in 6 months, which is a huge turnaround. And actually that turnaround was seen most acutely in Victoria, actually, where I guess if you go back 6 months, for the reasons we mentioned before, restaurateurs would have been in a very negative position financially, and from a business viability perspective, people would have been worried about the long term, because although delivery was providing a lifeline and a source of revenue for a whole bunch of reasons around the structural economics of their business, restaurateurs in many cases were relying on dine-in revenue to make their business viable. So huge turnaround. That's really positive. And I guess that's reflective of the fact that in the main, Sean, across the country, we're in a COVID normal situation where, although there are sporadic outbreaks and lockdowns here and there, which disrupt business confidence, in the main, we're in a COVID normal environment now.
Then another finding which follows on from what you've been talking about is that restaurants are planning to hire more staff.
Yes, indeed, we did see that. And what we saw was those plans varied a little bit depending on whether you're talking about small business or larger businesses. So larger businesses, the multinational or national chains particularly, generally levels of confidence were higher, and those restaurants were planning to a greater degree to hire more people, whereas the smaller high street single operator, mom and dad operator, confidence has not returned to the same extent. Confidence has improved, and you can imagine why that is. for various reasons of perhaps capital availability, etc., those restaurants have not yet got back to where they were in terms of confidence. But overall, the picture is a relatively positive one, noting that tragically we have seen some restaurants close.
So if the rollout of the vaccine continues successfully locally, what do you think the restaurant market will look like in 12 months? And what's that mean for Deliveroo?
Well, I think generally our economy is rocketing back to a pretty good place. And we talked before about the fact that other than small restrictions here and there and maybe some short lockdowns, which perhaps we'll see in different states as we get small outbreaks here and there, we are in a COVID normal situation. And so we are taking a slow and steady approach to vaccine rollout, unlike in the UK, where, as you probably know, levels of COVID are very, very high, but already 1/3 of the UK population has had the first dose. So they're going much quicker. So you can imagine in that country, a much bigger sort of, not quite overnight, but pretty rapid impact of the vaccine. Whereas I think here, the vaccine impact will not be felt as acutely because we're in a position, thankfully, of being in a relatively COVID normal scenario already. So I think the impact of the restaurant industry will be important and the impact on Deliveroo will be important, but I don't think we'll see like an overnight sudden impact in either direction. And I think delivery will continue to grow because many more consumers now have tried delivery and understand the convenience and the value offering and the range of food and the quality and all of that. But I do think overall, across all of Australia, all restaurant types, dine-in will remain the dominant part and the larger part of a restaurant's revenue for the foreseeable future.
We'll be back with more in a minute. I'm talking to Deliveroo CEO Ed McManus. So as things get back to normal, and hearing what you're saying there, it may be another year or 2 years or even longer before things where they were pre-pandemic. Innovation is going to become more important, I'd imagine, in your industry because, as you said, there are many players and you're all trying to find an edge. What are these innovative ideas you're thinking about?
Sometimes it's the basics, Sean. So many more people have now tried food delivery, whether that's with Deliveroo or another provider. And those who have tried it many times will know that unfortunately it doesn't always work perfectly every time. So sometimes you get, missing items. Sometimes the food will be late. Sometimes the food will be cold. I mean, we're not talking the majority of times. It doesn't happen that often, but it still happens enough because you think about the number of things that have to happen for it to happen successfully. There's a lot that can go wrong. And so sometimes what I've learned over the years is the important things to innovate in is the basics and, trying to get the food there on time, still hot, all those things that we talked about, the vast majority of the time. We've got a little bit of work to make sure that happens. So I would say, you always need to have one eye on what the future is. We're seeing expansion of what in the industry is called cloud kitchens. We call them editions kitchens. We have 2 in Australia. We'll certainly look at expanding.
What are
There's a
they?
lot of interest. So they are delivery only kitchens. And so we operate 2 in Melbourne, and there are many others now coming in the market. Deliveroo pioneered this concept many years ago. We'll see innovation in that area. We'll perhaps start to see the equivalent of cloud or editions kitchens for grocery, something that is really happening overseas, not so much yet in Australia, but I think that will come. But I guess while you always look to the future around what might be considered true innovation and new things, I think it's always important to look at the basics of your business too and just think, can we make our apps slightly better? Can we make our back-end restaurant reporting slightly better? Can we make the app better for the delivery riders in terms of what they see? How do we improve safety? Because this is an issue in our industry. Naturally there are safety concerns because people are out on the road delivering food. And how do we make sure the food gets there on time in a good state more often than we do today? So I guess there's 2 forms, sometimes that might be described as what we do already today in the basics. Really important to get that better as well as looking to the future.
Ed, thanks for talking to Fear and Green.
Pleasure.
That was Ed McManus, CEO of food delivery platform Deliveroo.